So I'm wondering if there are any trivia fans in the congregation. Raise your hand if you're a big trivia fan. Okay. All right. Well, I am terrible at trivia. And I like to joke that I married my husband because he's great at trivia. So when you're matched up with your spouse, I've always got a ringer. Likely because I'm not plugged into pop culture, trivia feels hard for me. And I'm not great at history. But it occurs to me that if we were playing a trivia game tonight, there's a great question of Jewish knowledge. So my question for you is, what is this week's Torah portion? No, you can't look it up. No Googling. So it's sort of a trick question because there are 3 correct answers. I know that you were thinking in your quiet and proudest self, I know the answer, I'm just not going to say it out loud tonight, which is fine. That's okay, I respect holding back. But if you were thinking naso, naso 2, or behalotecha, you were right. 3 answers? How can there be 3 answers to the question, what is this week's Torah portion? It is certainly atypical to have 3 correct answers to the question. Usually, all Jews everywhere are reading the same portion each Shabbat. But starting last week and through the month of June, that will not be the case. Allow me to explain. For our congregation, and a good number of Reformed congregations in North America and around the world that are outside the land of Israel, the portion for this week is naso 2, meaning the second half of the Torah portion that's called naso. So if somebody says, what's the Torah portion of the week? As proud Emmanuel participants, you can say naso 2. For conservative and Orthodox Jews around the world outside the land of Israel, the portion is just naso. For Jews in Israel, the portion is behalotecha. Confusing? Yes. So it all started last week when we celebrated Shavuot. Last Thursday, Jews all over the world celebrated the holiday. As we celebrated what was originally one of the big 3 pilgrimage festivals, marking the barley harvest and commemorating the Jewish people receiving Torah from God, Jews attended Chag services, studied late into the night, and overindulged in dairy delicacies like cheese blintzes, cheesecake, and ice cream. In the Reformed Jewish world and in Israel, we celebrated Shavuot as a single-day holiday, like we do for all of our festivals and holidays. We had services at night, celebrated the confirmation of our 10th grade students, and in the morning we had festival services, including Yizkor, our memorial service. And as the sun set on Friday night, the holiday of Shavuot came to an end and we ushered in Shabbat. Come Shabbat morning, our Israeli brothers and sisters opened their scrolls and read Parshat Naso, the next Torah portion in the order of text progression, and everyone else did something different. In conservative and Orthodox synagogues outside the land of Israel, our co-religionists celebrated the second day of Shavuot, and this was the difference. For them, it is a 2-day holiday. So on Shabbat, they read a special Torah portion for the second day of Shavuot, a reading that is separate and different than the usual Torah cycle portion, and special for the holiday. In Reformed congregations outside the land of Israel, like ours, having completed Shavuot when Shabbat began, we read from Parshat Naso similarly to our Israeli brothers and sisters, but we limited ourselves just to the first half of the portion, and we called it Naso 1. We split Parshat Naso not because it's the longest Torah portion of them all, which I think it is, but so that this week we could read Naso 2 and align with the diaspora, conservative, and Orthodox communities who are back on the regular weekly portion and reading Naso this week. All the Jews of the world were together and also a very tiny community. We come from a long line of Jews who balanced being Jewish with their national and ethnic identities, with their denominationalism and minchagim sensibilities. And there's something powerful about engaging in ritual and practice just like other Jews. Think about it on Pesach, the idea that all around the world people are sitting at Seder tables. We have our regional expressions in our foods, but as a whole, we are a synchronized community when it comes to Shabbat, festivals, and their seasons. It's likely that this synchronicity is what helped to maintain Judaism all these years and through the generations. I believe this idea is the core of splitting Parshat Naso into two, so that Reform Jews would quickly be back in the same portion as other diaspora Jews, or that we elongated our reading of Naso into splitting to allow conservative and Orthodox congregations to catch up. But in doing so, this same decision took us out of step with Israel, something that doesn't feel perfect. This shows the push and pull, the tension between ideology and practice, identity and community. So with all of this, you may be wondering, how are we going to get back on the same page or the same parsha? I want to reassure you, down the road, not too far from now, we will all sync up again. Just a month from now, on July 1st, the diaspora communities will combine Parshat, Chukat, and Balak and effectively catch up. These two portions are often combined into a double portion in a non-leap year to ensure that we get through the entire Torah reading cycle in a year. So it's not so anomalous to cluster them together this year. This little trivia question that I started with tonight brings into focus important ideas and philosophies of diaspora and Israel, Reform and other denominations, alignment and difference. It's interesting to consider how these decisions are made and adopted, and how they then become norms and set practices for communities and what they tell us about a community's values. As we enter into the month of June and begin our celebration of Pride, it similarly occurred to me that the history and evolution of Pride is not so dissimilar. On June 28, 1969, the NYPD raided the Stonewall Inn, a bar where gays and lesbians were known to gather. At that time, in New York City, masquerading as a member of the opposite sex was a crime, and a number of reports indicate that most of the people at the bar were transgender and gay men of color. Several people fought back against the police after customers and employees were aggressively dragged out of the bar. The History Channel recounts that a growing crowd of angry locals gathered in the streets. The confrontations quickly escalated and sparked 6 days of protests and violent clashes with the police outside the Stonewall Inn. By the time the riots ended on July 2nd, 1969, the gay rights movement went from being a fringe issue, largely ignored by politicians and the media, to front-page news worldwide. Pride began taking shape in ways that we recognize in 1970 on the one-year anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising. Activists in New York City marched through the streets of Manhattan in commemoration of the uprising, what we would recognize and call the first Gay Pride Parade. Activist Craig Schoonmaker is reported to having authorized the word pride. While his first thought was to use the words gay power, he rejected this title because he realized that there's very little chance for people in the world to have power. People did not have much power then, and even now we only have some. But anyone can have pride. Pride in themselves, and that would make them happier as people and produce the movement likely to produce meaningful change. For many years, Pride has been celebrated in more and more communities around the world towards the end of June with a big parade. This was the mode of Pride that I was most familiar with, a specific Saturday with parades in different communities. But this observance has been growing and changing. In June 2000, President Bill Clinton officially designated June as Gay and Lesbian Pride Month, and a more inclusive name was chosen in 2009 by President Barack Obama, calling it the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Pride Month. Pride has come to symbolize and magnify the right and celebration to be wholly and unabashedly who you are, and to allow all to see the tremendous beauty of that expression. It is intended to be affirming and, well, prideful in the best sense of the word. Torah and pride, finding our way, growing from our history, making thoughtful decisions to create paths that reflect our community and the things we value. Beautiful, inspiring, and important. May we continue to go from strength to strength. Shabbat Shalom.